I opened the doors of the university charity gala, holding the documents for the dream house I had just bought for our 10th anniversary, ready to surprise my husband, and saw Professor Daniel Whitaker on stage, with champagne in one hand and his 23-year-old student Sophie in the other. In front of 300 professors, donors, trustees, and students, he smiled like a man proud of his own cruelty and said, "Sometimes life gives you a second chance at real love." And I found mine. Then he looked directly at me and added, "Some people are wives. Some women are inspiration." The whole room laughed. Not nervous laughter. Real laughter. The kind people give when they think humiliation is entertainment. I stood there at the entrance in my black dress, still holding the cream folder from the title company. Inside were the papers for the red brick house near campus Daniel used to point at during our evening walks. "One day," he'd say, "that porch will be ours." I bought it that morning. For us. For 10 years of marriage. For the man currently holding another woman like I was already erased. Daniel lifted his glass again. "Emma always understood stability," he said smoothly. "Sophie reminds me what passion feels like." Sophie laughed and pressed herself closer to him. She was wearing a silver dress, and, around her neck, my pearl pendant. The one I had lost 3 months ago. The one Daniel said he'd never seen. Someone near the bar whispered, "Oh my God, she actually came." Another woman answered, "Poor Emma. Everyone knew except her." Everyone knew. That hurt more than the cheating. Daniel noticed the folder in my hand. "Emma," he said into the microphone, pretending kindness, "I didn't want you to find out like this." Liar? His voice was soft, polished, Professor Perfect. The same voice that once told me I was the best thing that ever happened to him. The same voice I believed while I worked extra hours so he could finish his doctorate. Sophie leaned toward the microphone with fake sympathy. I told him this might be a little insensitive. Then she smiled. "I mean, anniversaries are such awkward timing." More laughter. Phones were already up. Recording. They wanted tears. A scene. Something they could replay over brunch tomorrow. Daniel spread his hands dramatically. "Marriage is complicated. Emma is practical. She understands that sometimes love changes." Love changes. 10 years. 2 failed IVF treatments. I went through mostly alone because Daniel said hospitals made him uncomfortable. Late nights editing his grant proposals. Hosting department dinners for people who forgot my name. Paying bills while he built his reputation. And now, I was practical. A structure. A woman useful until someone younger arrived. If you're listening right now, tell me honestly, what would you do? Because in that moment, every person in that ballroom expected me to explode. They wanted rage. They wanted humiliation part 2. Instead, I just looked at him. Really looked. The tux I paid for, the watch I gave him, the cufflinks from his 10-year celebration. My fingerprints were all over the man humiliating me. Then I looked at Sophie. She rested her hand on his chest like she had won something valuable. She had no idea she was holding a loan, not a prize. I smiled. That made Daniel nervous. "Emma," he said again, sharper this time. "Say something." The room went quiet. 300 people waiting. I held the folder tighter and said very calmly, "Congratulations." Daniel blinked. Sophie's smile twitched. I took one slow step forward. "You both deserve exactly what's coming." Silence. No laughter this time. I turned around and walked out. No tears, no screaming, no broken glasses, just heels against marble and the sound of people whispering behind me. Daniel called my name once. I didn't stop. Outside, the November air hit like ice water. The valet looked at me with that awful expression. Pity. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I handed him the ticket for my car. "I'm perfect," I said. That was a lie, but sometimes lies are armor. I sat in my car and placed the deed folder on the passenger seat. Under the parking lot lights, I opened it again. Property owner, Emma Whitaker. Only my name. I had planned to surprise him tonight and add Daniel after dinner. I stared at that line and laughed once. Not because it was funny, because fate had handed me one small miracle in the middle of public execution. My phone started vibrating before I reached the first red light. Daniel. Daniel again. Then Sophie. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. Sophie, you handled that better than I expected. Honestly, classy. Another message came. Sophie, Daniel said you were dramatic. I pulled the car over so fast my tires hit the curb. He had told her about me, about my private fears, my insecurities, my marriage. Oh, he had handed my life to his mistress like lecture notes. Then Daniel called again. This time I answered. His voice was low and irritated. What the hell was that? I stared at the road ahead. What was what? That threat. Don't be dramatic, Emma. You embarrassed me. I almost laughed. He introduced his student mistress on stage in front of 300 people, and I embarrassed him. Daniel, I said quietly, go back inside. Your inspiration is waiting. He sighed like I was exhausting him. We need to discuss logistics. Logistics? Yes, accounts, the house, faculty events. I can't have this affecting my position. There it was. Not sorry, not, are you okay? His career. Always his career. I whispered, you really think I'm still going to protect you? A pause, then he said the sentence that changed everything. You always do. And just like that, something inside me went cold. Not broken. Finished. I ended the call. Then I opened my banking app. His personal credit card, linked to my account, frozen, shared savings transferred, passwords changed. Then I opened an old email from the University Compliance Office. 3 months ago, Daniel had signed an ethics disclosure confirming he had no inappropriate relationship with any student under his supervision. I knew that because I had scanned the document myself. Sophie wasn't just his mistress. She was his graduate student. And suddenly, my husband's little speech at the gala wasn't romantic. It was evidence. The next morning, I made Daniel coffee, the same way I had for 10 years. No sugar, a little cinnamon, dark roast only. He walked into the kitchen looking tired, but not guilty. That was the first thing I noticed. Men like Daniel never feel guilty. They feel inconvenienced. He stopped when he saw me standing there. For a second, I think he expected screaming. Instead, I slid the mug across the counter. Your coffee. He narrowed his eyes. You're being strangely calm. I smiled. And you're being exactly who you've always been. He exhaled sharply and sat down like this was somehow my failure. Emma, let's be adults. What happened last night was unfortunate, but pretending our marriage has been happy would be dishonest. Unfortunate. Like bad weather. Like parking tickets. Not betrayal. I leaned against the counter. How long? He didn't even pretend not to understand. 6 months. 6 months? 6 months of department dinners. 6 months of lies. 6 months of Sophie smiling at me in hallways while sleeping with my husband. I nodded slowly. And everyone knew? He looked away. That was my answer. I laughed once. Wow, I really was the last person invited to my own funeral. Daniel rubbed his forehead dramatically. Please don't do this. Do what? Make yourself the victim. I stared at him. There it was. The narcissist's favorite trick. Cheat. Lie. Humiliate. Then accuse you of being too emotional about it. She understands me, he said. She challenges me. With you, everything became routine. Routine. Funny word for loyalty. I walked to the fridge, took out eggs, and started cooking breakfast. He looked genuinely confused. Aren't you going to say anything? Oh, I am, I said. Just not yet. That made him uncomfortable. Good. Before leaving, he adjusted his tie and said, We should keep this private. For the university. Scandal helps no one. I almost smiled. For the university. Not for us. Not for dignity. For tenure. For reputation. For Professor Daniel Whitaker, moral philosopher and chair of academic ethics. I kissed his cheek. Actually kissed him. He froze. Of course, I whispered. I'd hate for the truth to damage your career. Then he left. The second the front door closed, I opened his office. Daniel believed in privacy only for himself. His study had always been his space. I respected that for years. Respect is expensive. I was done paying. His laptop sat on the desk. Locked. But Daniel was predictable. Professors who teach ethics usually have terrible passwords because they think intelligence replaces caution. I tried Sophie 1999. Wrong. I tried Whitaker 10. Wrong. Then I typed the name of his first published book. Correct. I just sat there for a second. Not shocked. Disappointed by how easy it was. His email opened, and there she was. Sophie Lang, dozens of emails. At first, office hours, thesis questions, recommendation letters. Then dinner. Then hotel reservations. Then things I wish I had never read. I can't wait until she's out of the picture. You deserve someone who worships your mind. She's safe. I'm alive with you. I closed my eyes. 10 years reduced to an inconvenience. But that wasn't the worst part. I found expense receipts, hotel bills, weekend trips, a necklace from Cartier. Paid with our joint account. No, paid with my salary. I kept scrolling. Then I found the university ethics disclosure, faculty relationship compliance form. Question 7. Are you currently involved in any romantic or sexual relationship with a student under your supervision? Daniel's answer, no. Signed. Dated. Official. I stared at that document for a long time. That wasn't cheating anymore. That was fraud. Career-ending fraud. And suddenly the game changed. This wasn't heartbreak. This was evidence. My phone buzzed. My best friend, Rachel. If revenge had a human form, it would be Rachel Simmons in red lipstick and courtroom heels. She answered before the second ring. You sound quiet, she said. That means someone's about to die. Not die, I said. Just professionally disappear. I told her everything. The gala, Sophie, the emails, the ethics form. Silence. Then she said, Oh, I love when terrible men get organized consequences. Can I prove enough? Rachel laughed. Emma, sweetheart, he handed his mistress a public confession in front of 300 witnesses. You're not building a case, you're collecting souvenirs. For the first time in 24 hours, I breathed. What do I do first? Nothing emotional, nothing dramatic. Smile. Let him think you're broken, not dangerous. I looked at Daniel's office, his books, his awards, his framed newspaper interview titled, The Face of Modern Academic Integrity. Irony really was generous, Rachel continued. Step 1, copy everything. Step 2, lawyer. Step 3, financial audit. Men like Daniel never just cheat romantically, they cheat structurally. She was right. And once I started looking, I found it. Transfers I didn't recognize. Conference reimbursements that never happened. A research grant dinner at a 5-star hotel with champagne service for 2. Private tuition payments? For Sophie. Paid from the educational consulting account I managed. My hands went cold. He wasn't just sleeping with her. I was funding her. I whispered, he used my money to build his affair. Rachel's voice dropped. Good. That makes the ending even better. That evening, Daniel came home carrying flowers. White lilies. My least favorite. He never remembered that. He smiled like a politician. Peace offering? I took them. Thank you. He relaxed. That was the thing about narcissists. They mistake silence for surrender. At dinner, he talked about campus gossip, about a donor meeting, About Sophie transferring departments to avoid complications, like we were discussing weather. Then he reached for my hand. We can do this gracefully, Emma. I don't want war. I let him hold my hand. And I thought, war already happened. You just mistook my silence for defeat. I smiled softly. No, I said. Neither do I. He smiled back, relieved. He had no idea that while he was speaking, every email, every receipt, every lie was already backed up in 3 separate places. And tomorrow morning, I was meeting the one person at the university who hated academic scandal even more than I hated my husband, the dean. The dean's office smelled like expensive coffee and quiet panic. Dr. Margaret Holloway had built her career protecting the university's reputation with the precision of a woman who could destroy a life using only an email and perfect grammar. She was feared by faculty, worshipped by donors, and hated by every professor who thought rules were optional. She looked at me over gold-rimmed glasses. Emma, if this is about last night's gala, I strongly suggest discretion. Of course she already knew. Scandal traveled faster than truth. I placed a folder on her desk. It's not about the gala, I said. It's about academic misconduct, financial fraud, and your chair of ethics sleeping with his graduate student while signing legal documents denying it. Silence. Real silence. She opened the folder. The ethics disclosure, the hotel receipts, the emails, the tuition payments, the screenshots. Her face changed slowly like a storm building behind glass. She read one message twice. Then she placed the papers down very carefully. How long have you known? Since yesterday. And you came here first? I gave a small smile. No. First I cried in a parking lot. Then I came here. For the first time, her expression softened. Just a little. She leaned back. Daniel is up for the provost recommendation next quarter. I know. And Sophie's father sits on the donor board. I blinked. That I didn't know. Margaret nodded. Yes, Richard Lang. Half the science building has his name on it. Suddenly, everything made more sense. The confidence, the arrogance. Sophie wasn't just a student. She was protected. Daniel hadn't fallen in love. He had upgraded strategically. A younger woman. Wealthy family. Academic connections. Not passion. Career planning. That realization hurt more than the affair, because it meant even betrayal had been calculated. Margaret folded her hands. If I move on this officially, there will be war. I looked her directly in the eyes. He already started it. She held my gaze for a long moment. Then she said, Good. I was hoping you'd say that. That was the moment I realized I wasn't alone. She opened her laptop. Unofficially, there have been whispers about Daniel for years. Female students changing advisors. Quiet complaints that disappeared. Nothing provable. Nothing strong enough. Until now. Yes. She printed something and slid it across the desk. A previous internal complaint. Anonymous. 2 years old. A student claimed Daniel had offered special mentorship in exchange for private dinners and weekend conference trips. No investigation. Closed due to lack of evidence. I felt sick. Sophie wasn't the first. She was just the one arrogant enough to wear my necklace in public. Margaret's voice turned cold. I hate men who mistake charm for immunity. I almost laughed. Same. She stood. I'll begin a confidential review, quietly. But if this goes public, donors will panic. Trustees will interfere, and Daniel will lie beautifully. He's very good at that. Yes, she said, which is why we need someone better. She handed me a business card. Julia Bennett, University Legal Counsel, divorce attorney before academia. Dangerous. Call her, Margaret said. And Emma? I paused at the door. Do not warn your husband. Let him keep performing. Narcissists are most vulnerable when they believe they're winning. I smiled. Finally, someone who spoke my language. That afternoon, I met Julia. She was exactly what I expected. Sharp navy suit, no wasted words, and the kind of calm that made dishonest people sweat. She reviewed everything in silence. At the end, she asked, "Do you want divorce, revenge, or destruction?" I thought about Daniel on stage, Sophie wearing my pearls, the laughter. "The correct answer," I said, "is yes." She nodded approvingly. Good, because mercy would be a waste of everyone's time. I liked her immediately. She explained quickly. Daniel had exposure in 3 places: university ethics, marital finances, and professional fraud. But then she said something I wasn't expecting. "There's one more issue." "What?" She turned her screen toward me. "Property records. The red brick dream house. My anniversary surprise. Except there was another address attached to Daniel's financial activity. A downtown luxury apartment. Lease started 8 months ago. Paid partially through a consulting account." I stared at the screen. "He got her an apartment." Julia shook her head. "No, worse. He listed himself as co-resident. Not an affair, a second life. Furniture purchases, utility bills, monthly wine subscriptions. Oh, he hadn't been cheating. He had been building a replacement marriage." I sat there very still. There's a specific kind of pain when you realize your betrayal had floor plans. Julia watched me carefully. "You can stop this now if you want. Quiet divorce, settlement, walk away." I looked at the lease. At the signatures? At the dates. One of them was our anniversary weekend. The weekend he told me he was at an ethics conference in Chicago. I smiled. Actually smiled. "No," I said. "I think I'd like the full experience." That night, Daniel came home unusually cheerful. He kissed my forehead. "I have wonderful news." I nearly admired the confidence. "What happened?" "The board is considering me for provost early. It's not official yet, but things are moving." Of course they were. He poured himself wine like a man celebrating a future already secured. "I told you everything would settle down." I watched him from across the kitchen. This man had publicly humiliated me, stolen from me, lied to me, funded his mistress with my money, and now expected me to clap for his promotion. Amazing. "Daniel?" I asked softly. "Are you happy?" He looked surprised, then smiled. "Yes, for the first time in years." Honesty. Finally. I nodded. "Good. Because happy people get careless." At midnight, after he fell asleep, I opened his phone using the same code he'd had for 7 years. Sophie's birthday. Predictable. Their messages were disgusting. Then I found something else. A calendar invite. Friday. Private donor dinner. Location, Lang Estate. Hosted by Richard Lang, subject line, future announcements. I stared at it. Daniel wasn't just planning an affair, he was planning an engagement. A public one. Again. Only this time with donors, trustees, and the board. He was going to replace me officially. I took screenshots. Sent them to Julia. Then I sat in the dark beside the man who thought he was building a perfect future. And I realized something beautiful. I didn't need to ruin his life. I just needed to let him keep building it. Right until the exact moment I pulled the foundation out from under him. By Friday morning, I was living 2 lives. In one, I was still Emma, the calm wife, the quiet woman making coffee, answering polite texts, smiling through dinner like nothing had changed. In the other, I was building the collapse of Daniel Whitaker with legal precision. And honestly, the second version of me slept much better. Rachel called at 7 a.m. "Tell me you didn't do anything emotional." I poured coffee. Define emotional. "Did you slash tires?" "No." "Did you key his car?" "Rachel, I'm offended." "Good. Because rich men recover from property damage. They do not recover from public professional humiliation." Exactly. Julia had already filed the first quiet steps: financial separation, account protection, document preservation. Margaret had launched the confidential ethics review. Daniel knew none of it. He was too busy preparing for his donor dinner at the Lang estate, his promotion dinner, his replacement wife audition. That afternoon, I visited the red brick house alone. Sunlight hit the old porch exactly the way Daniel used to describe. The front door still smelled like fresh paint and cedar. It should have been a beginning. Instead, it became headquarters. I stood in the empty living room and whispered, "No, this is better." Because now it was mine, not ours. Mine. I sat on the hardwood floor with my laptop and every financial record from the last 2 years. Transfers, hotel charges, tuition payments, luxury apartment rent, weekend conferences. He had stolen nearly $80,000 while telling me university budgets were tight. $80,000. Do you know what hurt most? Not the money, the audacity, the assumption that I would never look, that I would keep loving him too blindly to count. At 2 p.m., Julia arrived carrying a leather folder and the expression of a woman bringing excellent bad news. "We found more." I almost smiled. "I love when you say that." She sat beside me. "The consulting account he used? It wasn't just affair money. Daniel redirected donor funds through discretionary faculty reimbursements." I stared at her. "That's embezzlement." "Yes," I whispered. "He really wanted this girl." Julia shook her head. "No, he really wanted power." And there it was. Not love, not passion, ambition in a younger dress. Sophie was never special. She was useful. That somehow made me hate him even more. Julia opened the folder. "I've prepared divorce filings, but I recommend timing." "Friday night." She nodded. "The donor dinner?" "No," I said. "Bigger." Because I had learned something else. The university's annual Founders Gala was Saturday night. 600 guests, trustees, press, alumni, donors. And Daniel was receiving the Distinguished Ethics and Leadership Award. Even saying it felt like comedy. He would stand on stage again, smile again, perform again. Perfect. Rachel joined us an hour later with Thai food and dangerous energy. She dropped into the chair dramatically. I brought noodles and revenge strategy. A true friend. She listened to everything, then said, "Simple. Let him walk onto that stage believing he has won. Let him thank his student mistress with his eyes. Let everyone watch. And then," she smiled, "then we hand the dean a microphone." Even Julia laughed. We spent 3 hours building the sequence. Documents to legal, evidence to trustees, financial report to university council, divorce papers delivered privately, 5 minutes before the award ceremony. Not enough time to recover. Just enough time to panic. Psychological architecture matters. Revenge is timing. At home that night, Daniel was almost glowing. He loosened his tie and kissed my cheek like a husband in a detergent commercial. "Richard Lang loves me," he said. "He says I'm exactly the kind of leadership the university needs." I set plates on the table. "I'm sure he does." He smiled, missing everything. "And Sophie handled herself beautifully. She's mature for her age." I nearly dropped the fork. Mature. That word men use when they want youth without accountability. He sat down. "There's something I should probably tell you after Saturday." I looked at him. He was going to do it. Confess on his terms. After securing the promotion. How elegant. I smiled softly. "No rush. I think surprises should wait." He looked relieved, because narcissists love mercy they did not earn. At midnight, while he slept, I packed quietly. Not clothes, evidence, backups, printed statements, screenshots, the ethics disclosure. Every lie had paper now. I placed the final copy into my bag and noticed something on his nightstand. A velvet ring box. I opened it. Diamond. Expensive. Predictable. For Sophie. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I closed it and put it exactly back where I found it. Let him keep his script. Tomorrow, I would rewrite the ending. Before sleeping, I checked my phone. A message from Sophie. Sophie, tomorrow will probably be awkward. Please be graceful. I read it twice. Then I replied with only 3 words. I always am. She reacted with a heart. A heart. I laughed so hard I scared myself. The arrogance was almost artistic. Saturday morning arrived bright and cold. Founders Gala night. Execution night. Daniel adjusted his bow tie in the mirror. You're wearing blue? He asked. Yes. You usually wear black. I fastened my earrings. People change. He smiled at my reflection. I'm glad we chose dignity. I looked directly at him in the mirror. No, Daniel, you chose arrogance. He frowned slightly. What does that mean? I smiled. You'll see. And for the first time all week, he looked afraid. The ballroom was full when Daniel walked on stage to receive the Distinguished Ethics and Leadership Award. He looked perfect, confident, smiling. Sophie sat beside her father in a gold dress, already wearing victory on her face. Then Daniel opened the envelope handed to him backstage. Divorce papers. His smile broke. I watched it happen from the front row. Confusion. Panic. Fear. Beautiful. Still, he walked to the microphone. Narcissists always perform. Thank you, he began, voice slightly shaking. Integrity is the foundation of leadership. Margaret Holloway stood. Actually, she said, taking the second microphone, before Professor Whitaker continues, the university would like to address an ethics violation involving falsified disclosures, misuse of donor funds, and an inappropriate relationship with a student under direct supervision. Silence. Pure silence. Sophie went white. Richard Lang looked like he'd been slapped. Daniel turned toward me. I smiled. Calmly, systematically. Margaret continued. Effective immediately, Professor Daniel Whitaker is suspended pending termination review. Gasps, phones, whispers, exactly like the first gala. Only this time, he was the entertainment. Sophie stood up. Daniel, you said this was handled? Handled? Perfect. Richard Lang pulled her back like she was a legal liability. Daniel stepped off stage, furious. Emma, what have you done? I looked at him and handed him the house deed. My favorite part, I said softly, is that the dream house was always mine. Just like the money. Just like the truth. You traded loyalty for performance, now you get applause. He whispered, You ruined me. I smiled. No, Daniel, you did. I just made sure everyone finally saw it.